Hey guys, what's going on? It's Terrestrial Thursday. We're going to give everybody a second to get in here. I've got the team from InfiniGods up on stage with me already. Free Market will be in here in a second, and we will get this kicked off. While we're waiting, why don't we just get started with a little bit of a casual discussion? How are you guys doing today?
Hey, we're doing great. How's it going?
Yeah, not too bad, man. It's a beautiful day outside, but I'm excited to be up here with you guys today talking about what you guys have going on at InfiniGods, what what your backgrounds are, your views and thoughts about all things P2E. I think it's a really valuable discussion, and we always love having this with different teams, especially teams that are building for the future and kind of creating something that's going to, hopefully stand the test of time.
Yeah, I completely agree. Thanks so much for having us on. We're all pumped to be here. Obviously, for all of us, the space means a great deal to us, and we're really passionate about the work we're doing and what we're building at InfiniGods, and just really excited about being on stage with you guys today to share with your community and learn more about what you guys have been building and where we're aligned in the space, and I think that's obviously speaks to really Web3 in general, right? Is all these projects who are willing to collaborate and listen to each other's ideas and help build together is what really makes the space so special.
Yeah, definitely agree on that wholeheartedly as well, right? Like, we're kind of all holding hands together in this space, particularly the ones that are, treating it with respect and really trying to build something bigger than just a simple risk protocol where there's this massive hype cycle. The token goes up by, 2000x and then just crashes and you get left with a whole bunch of bag holders. The potential, the long lasting potential of what this means for the gaming industry as well as the NFT industry is huge, right? And I think that if teams and projects are talking to each other, working together, and building towards that kind of goal, I think that is a rising tide that definitely lifts all ships.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not a zero sum game. Not in Web3 in general, and certainly not in gaming. It never has been. It never will be. So I think projects that are focused on how do you push the ecosystem forward. How do you actually integrate real Web3 technology? Which could be NFTs, which can be governance, which actually means a lot of things, including transparency and security. Those are the elements that we're thinking through a ton. Not so much about like when token, but maybe more so like why token. That's kind
Love
of
it.
a saying that we have.
Love it. Yeah. And we're going to talk about a saying that we have too, because we think that P2E needs a bit of a rebranding. But let's just jump right into it on that note. I don't think Free Market's going to be able to make it with us today. But I always like to start off with the question and getting to know the team of, what is your background? When did you first get into crypto? What was the path towards NFTs? And then, of course, what was the moment that you saw P2E really being something special enough to want to work on yourselves. If Mango is able to speak, let's start with Mango.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And kind of piggybacking off what Panther said, really appreciate you guys having us on here. And so, yeah, the quick background on me is I come from actually the sales and operations world from SaaS, sales as a software. And so that's really combined with the operations is my background. And so being in sales, I would stare at my computer all day. And so eventually got into NFTs about a year and a half, or I guess a year ago, almost a year to a date, with the Doge Pound NFT was actually the first project I ever got into. And then ultimately, what led me to play to earn gaming Web3 gaming, the entire ecosystem was Alpha Game through Wolf Game, and that's actually how I came to meet Panther, and my best friend in real life and in the metaverse, Farmer Ron. He kind of drug me into the Wolf Game ecosystem, and I am forever grateful for that. And so that's how I came to know Panther, and then Panther linked up with Owen, and then from there we just started building out the community there. So my role as head of the community is, obviously run the Discord, social medias, all of that. But more so, just having fun, talking about games, engaging. And so that's really my idea with the InfiniGods community, is like, come in here, talk about games, any games. If you want to talk about old fun Web 2 games, right? Or if you want to, I really just want to make it as fun as possible. Not so much about the, win token, win drop, whatever it may be. I really want to build a community around games. And so, yeah, that's the quick rundown on Mango there.
I love that. Yeah, especially because gamers in general typically play a wide variety of games, whether it's just in one genre or a bunch of different genres. So I do think it's interesting to, create a space that people want to just talk about more than just like your game in particular, because that's what gamers tend to do. They tend to join these communities and stick with them and make friends that really kind of just transcends that one single game. Before I kick it off to Owen, Mango, what was the Web 2 game that you think you've probably put the most hours in?
Oh, I love that. I absolutely love that question. And just to quickly piggyback off of your last statement there, yeah, when I actually quote unquote interviewed with InfiniGods, Damon, the CEO, better known as the Guru, we spent the whole time talking about Ether orcs, right? And so it was just like, from that moment on, I was just like, these guys completely align, with my vision on how I see community, in the Web3 space. And so, as far as Web 2 game, I spent 2 years of my life playing Halo 2. I thought Halo 2 ranking system was the most competitive, uh, as well as I thought it was the most competitive from a ranking standpoint, and it was the first time where I found myself, going on Bungie.net every, 10 times a day, seeing, hey, where do I rank in Team Slayer? Where do I rank in, big team battle, whatever it may be. So Halo 2 is by far where I have logged the most hours as a gamer.
Love it. Yeah, the rise of leaderboards is an incredibly sticky tool too, right? It's just you makes you click the button and just want to play more and more and more. Owen, let's kick that question off over to you as well. What's your background in crypto, NFTs, and even Web 2 gaming?
Yeah, sure. And thanks for having us on. And I'm one of the co-founders of InfiniGods. Spent the last 11 years of my career building the gaming business at Facebook. Previously, that was at Microsoft. Actually, worked on some Xbox stuff, which is really cool. First, really came across crypto. One of our clients actually at the time, when I was at Facebook, was Crypto Kitties in 2017, and very, very interesting, where like people actually could own their cat and they could actually breed it. And we saw just from partnership with them, we just saw this amazing growth and people wanted to play, but there was so much friction in getting on there. And so even back then felt there was something there when you apply real digital ownership to assets within gaming. This could really transform the industry. And fast forward to 2021, and Axie just kind of really blew up that summer. And so I'm a bit of a gaming data nerd, understanding how games grow, how they monetize, and seeing just the revenue numbers from Axie, but the revenue per player and the player behavior. It's like, wow, that's insane. I've never seen that on a free to play game or a console game or anything like that. And when I took a look into it, I was like, there's some interesting economics here, which I don't think will pan out, but there's definitely a core group of people who want to engage and play to earn. But really, it was like, oh, people can actually really own their assets, and that can actually really transform how games are played and how players interact with developers. And so, jumped 2 feet into that. I knew Damon, the co-founder, for about 8 years. He was previously a client as well, and we said we have to do something in this space. We think it's fundamentally, I wouldn't say broken, but it's like it's been approached in a finance first, gaming second, and there's just a lot of other pain points in there. And we said, hey, we need to go and fix these. And so, fast forward a few months later, we raised a funding round, and have the last really 3 months been really building out a team, building out our first product. So yeah, that's my background, and where I am from a crypto point of view.
I love that too. And just saying, everything's been approached from a finance first, gaming second. That's one of the big narratives we kind of talk about on Terrestrial Thursdays really frequently, is how the gaming has to be first. It's got to be fundamentally just a game that people want to play, and then any kind of earning or owning potential afterwards is just the icing on the cake, because gaming is a proven model. People have played games for the better part of 30 years now, and played them religiously, and never really yielded anything off of them except for some enjoyment of time. And then, of course, later on with the internet, the social experience as well. But flipping those focuses, I think, is going to be a huge component. And I love hearing teams say that.
Yeah, I think it's a really important one, because we are absolutely at an inflection point in Web3 gaming. We've kind of come through the first 18 months, and I think you have to say people like companies like Axie are trailblazers. But it is very clear, if you just focus on earning, you get into a death spiral, because everybody can't earn in a game. And I think the other one we're seeing now is Step N, who actually really good, like, promise, like, hey, like, you should get out and exercise, and by the way, there's some rewards. But how consumers took that was, I make $20 by walking to work instead of taking the bus. But not everybody, that economically doesn't pan out. So really, what I think what we're getting into in a lot of projects, I think, including StarWolvez as well, like, it's really saying, look, there will be a portion of players who just will be either better or want to spend more time purely to, like, build up, I would say, earnings, or build up things like power ups in games. But predominantly, your user base actually needs to be there for the game if it's to be economically successful. And so if you're looking at, like, I want to invest in these games via an NFT or buying a token, you need to be very strong on the conviction that there's going to be fun gameplay that a lot of people want to spend time at. And actually, the second point is, people want to they'll want to enjoy it so much, they'll want to actually spend money with no expectation of return, because they're the folks that will actually have to make the market with the people who own the initial NFTs and own the tokens. And so I think people are beginning to really understand and get that, as we kind of move forward. And I think that's the exciting part, is I think it'll become less about purely play to earn or tokens, and more about things like, hey, blockchain allows scarcity, it allows digital ownership, it allows interoperability, which is what we think is the real value of building on the technology.
Yeah, well, gamers spending money in games with zero expectation of anything coming back is also a very proven business model. So again, just shifting that dynamic back to more of like a peer-to-peer situation, I think is going to be such a pivotal thing for gamers, and the demand will come. Kind of got a little bit sidetracked with the introductions there, but it's such a great discussion, and it's so easy to have. But Panther, let's finish it off with you, and just tell us a little bit more about yourself, and how you ended up here with InfiniGods.
Yeah, absolutely. I got into the space about 2.5 years ago, just sort of as the pandemic was happening. Just my background is economics, traditional finance. So, I kind of saw what was happening with the world, and really central bank policy and monetary supply. And in my eyes, that meant a weak dollar, which probably meant, there was room for Bitcoin to go, and then quickly got into Ethereum. And then eventually it was Dogecoin, and the cycle kind of went forward. I got into NFTs in January of last year, when I discovered NBA Top Shot, which I know for many was an entry point into the ecosystem. And for me, in my background of economics, was more where I saw the value with NFTs, not so much thinking about the speculative nature that they could have, which we saw overtake the space, I would say the last, 8 to 10 months, but looking at the efficiencies that were created through the technology, specifically around things like, transparency, things like the cost of verification and knowing that, okay, this is an authentic, call it ticket or authentic piece of memorabilia or collectible. You're able to prove that with on the blockchain. Having the ability to see what the transactions are actually going for a comparable item, was a big one for me as well. And also thinking back to all the cards I'd collected and stuff when I was a kid, was the ability to store those items and not have to worry about cases or where you're going to keep them, stuff like that. They're secured in mint condition on the blockchain. So those were really the three big elements for me that got me excited about NFTs. I did my executive education actually at MIT on blockchain technology, to learn the granular history and the ins and outs of what the technology means and how it can be applied across basically every industrial vertical, and how it can impact our everyday lives. And from there, I actually got more into the investment side of the space. I was hired as a chief investment officer for a digital asset fund, that focused on fungible tokens, and then I took that strategy to non-fungible tokens, and got into play to earn. My favorite Web2 game was Clash of Clans, and Boom Beach. So I certainly paid a lot of money for things I had no expectation there'd be a return. It's just a matter of having fun, but also the social and the competitive element of trying to build your clan and build your village, and the people you meet in the social channels. I think going to what you were saying is that's what ultimately gamers want to do, and what should drive a game and drive a game economy, are those elements. And it is an added benefit, an element to now have a technology that can say, hey, like, yeah, there's actually only X number of these items in game. And if the dev was to create more, everybody would be well aware. So been very excited about this opportunity with InfiniGods. Got to know Owen and Damon about a little over 6 months ago at this point. And really for me, we're very aligned from a belief system standpoint. And so it is about games and about making games that are fun, and an engaging community. And from there, we can figure out, the whole monetization side and the asset side and the token side.
Yeah, I love that. All of what you just said there with, especially just, sorry, I just need a drink of water there. Putting all of the power into the people's hands, and just the blockchain, Jesus, the transparency behind it all. Sorry, I'm gonna get caught back up there. I want to shift into specifically the dynamic that's between traditional gamers and the pushback that they have towards, a little bit towards crypto, but specifically towards NFTs, right? Like, if you go on community places like Reddit and whatnot, the second that NFTs are mentioned, I mean, it just turns hostile. We've seen so many of these big AAA game developers saying that they're looking at adding NFTs into their games, adopting Web3 principles, and many of them actually get bullied into retracting that statement. Now, I think it's pretty obvious that all of these companies have a Web3 development team behind the scenes doing discovery, keeping an eye on the scene, and really kind of just theory crafting how they can integrate that with a lot of their existing IP. Of course, Grand Theft Auto is rumored to be integrating crypto and NFTs into their next game, which is absolutely massive. And I kind of just see, things like StarWolvez, things like InfiniGods, like, we're the young, nimble startups that can do these things. But, on the other side of it, they're pointing their ship in the same direction. And I think that's going to be great for everyone. But going back to the traditional gamer and how upset they get, like, what are you telling your friends that are traditional gamers but might not be invested in the crypto and NFT space about what you're doing? And how do you try and rationalize or educate them about why this is a good thing and why it can be really beneficial for them, because the parallels are just, it's so obvious, but there's some kind of barrier in between acceptance there. So Mango, why don't you start with that?
Yeah, there definitely is, a barrier between Web 2 gaming and Web 3 gaming, so to say. And so, and a lot of my friends, they still play, we still play Warzone and Apex. They're pretty competitive with it. I'm more of just a social gamer from that aspect. So I think a big part of it is, having to, actually having that social aspect of being able to jump online and talk to your friends and who's better than who, right? Or even the team aspect of where do we fall on the leaderboard or whatever it may be. And so I think the social element will be kind of the big push as far as when you start seeing, when I can call up my, five best friends from high school and say, hey, log into StarWolvez, we're dropping in, right? Or whatever it may be, we're going to go on a quest together. So I think the big gap to bridge there is really, the real time social element, with voice chat and things along those lines.
Yeah, I think that that's a really great train of thought there too with the social thing. One of the things that I always think about with games like the Simpsons kind of, I can't remember what it was called, but the Simpsons had a base builder game. Things like Farmville, back on the Facebook gaming days, where you could actually go to somebody else's farm or somebody else's base or somebody else's city. You could kind of help them out with some actions and stuff like that. But you could see it and you could see what other people were building, and it's kind of inspires some competition because you want to build a bigger city or a nicer city or all that stuff. But you know the really great thing about the NFT space and the Web3 gaming space is now when you go, potentially when you go to somebody's home base or you go to somebody's land and all the stuff that they're building, you know that they own that too, right? And I think that that will actually propel a really big social experience behind it too. In a lot of ways, it's like going over to somebody's house. One of your friends has bought a brand new house. You walk in and they have it decorated. Like there's a real tangible sense of ownership. And that's one of the big things that's been missing in the digital space, right? Like even playing on Fortnite, like my kid has, probably hundreds or thousands of dollars worth of skins, but I know, and I think he knows at the end of the day, he doesn't own them. There's nothing he can do with them. They're tied to his account. I think that that's just going to be like such a profound thing that so many gamers are going to have that aha moment, especially as these like social metaverse kind of spaces continue to become prominent. Panther, you want to jump in on that question too?
Yeah, happy to. I think it's such a great question. It's pretty loaded because there's a lot to it. The two main barriers I think are change and education, right? So people are naturally somewhat opposed to change. They don't do well with change. And as you were saying, right, people have been playing games for call it the last 30 years, and there's been a certain way that relationship works. So when you go to change that setup, people naturally feel uncomfortable about that. The second is the education element, and I think it's very easy to criticize something you don't understand. So depending how people have been introduced to NFTs, they're very quick to make a judgment on that. I think people who have done their due diligence, who have found someone they've gone to that says, "Hey, I know you're into this. Can you explain it to me?" As you would say, how are we explaining this to our friends or our family when we're thinking about gaming? It's as simple as remember the sword that you got from that quest. It's actually yours forever. You want to go to another game, you could take that with you. Or if you're done with the game, you could sell it or transfer it or gift it to somebody. I think keeping it simple in that regard resonates with people, rather than making it more complex or, getting into other areas. So I do think those are the two biggest key elements. And of course, as we see, more people adopt and share and educate others, I think there's a natural adoption to the technology that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, for sure. And when you talk about the education part of it, I mean, I'm going to echo that statement a million times over too, especially when I jumped into NFTs and Web3 as a full-time profession. You start to meet people and they talk about, oh, what do you do and whatnot. And it really is just like you can't tell them why it's necessary. You can't like just jump right in there and be like, you need to be paying attention to this space, because as you said, people get so accustomed to the way things are and the way thing that they've just worked, right? And that doesn't mean that there can't be a better way or a natural evolution of this stuff. But the most effective way of talking to people is just letting them know that you're a part of this, and if they have any questions, that you're always open to have the conversation, right? And I've found that I've had so much more success with my traditional gaming friends, just kind of letting that door open and having them choose to walk through it, right? And them kind of taking that own discovery path themselves, and you have a much better conversation when they've kind of opened up to it a little bit. So I definitely agree, and it definitely can't be a brute force approach. I think that eventually, as this evolves, people are just going to become so accustomed to hearing it, accustomed to seeing it, that it's just going to kind of naturally start to settle in, and like a snowball rolling down a hill, it'll just get bigger and bigger and bigger. Oh, and let's finish that question off with you, just with the traditional gamers and how we're going to get them into the space.
Yeah, so they'll probably be the last to get in, and so I think it's I think it's a tactical mistake to go after the what we call it in our maybe our words, the traditional gamers, which is your kind of your male 15 to 40 hardcore into console or a PC game. It's actually a pretty narrow audience from a gaming point of view. And so we would look at Web3, and the first adopters, outside of folks who just love to collect NFTs, the first adopters it's more the free to play audience, which is about 10x bigger and 10x more profitable. And so if you think about what crypto and what Web3 in terms of ownership represents versus free to play, it's a much easier transition for players. And so that's one of the big problems in this in gaming. Forget about Web3. It's that there's about 150 billion spent every year on games by consumers. 110 billion of that is free to play, and that just disappears when you stop playing. And you basically say to that audience, say, look, you love playing Candy Crush, you love getting to level 1000, you spend on power-ups, you spend to get better than your friends, you do all this kind of stuff to complete this puzzle you love. Well, instead of you just losing that when it goes on to the second version of Candy Crush, no, actually we're going to let you continue some of your progress, or take some of the assets that you've either bought or earned within our first experience and take it to that second experience. So it's not a wasted investment. And so I think and again, this is where it's been very curious with the market, that we've some really big projects who've raised a ton of money in things like land sales, and they're just tackling the hardest market. Not even from like a game development side, like the traditional gamers, they expect like quality 4K graphics, unbelievable game loop, deep gameplay, regular DLCs. The marketing activation, it needs to be through the roof just to get the required number of players into those games. And so if you're going to tackle that side of the market first, I think it's going to be incredibly hard. But I think if you look and say, what kind of a gaming experiences do like the vast majority of people like? And like in our case, we're targeting our first game it's a merge game. It's based off puzzle. There's 300 million people who play puzzle games every month on their mobile phones and on desktop. And you say, I'll give you a free to play experience. As you like that experience, you then will naturally, and again, we've seen this in our experience in gaming, some players will decide they actually want to spend to progress. Others will be skillful enough they won't need that. But the folks who do spend to progress, hey, you know what you're buying? That's actually a limited asset, and you now own it. And by the way, when you get finished with it, you can use it in another game in our series, or other developers can build off it, or you could actually sell it to other people who actually want to use it to extend their gameplay experience. And so I think that's not exactly saying, how do I tell my hardcore friend who's like plays Fortnite or Call of Duty all day long? I think it's like it's focusing on a different audience, if we're to be successful. And what we saw with free to play, which was the last big change, and how do you pay for gameplay experiences? Because you can say it's Web 1, Web 2, but really was, do I pay up front for a game, or do I essentially pay as I play? And again, that started with the simpler experiences like a Farmville. And now you see those kind of console players, they're very used to doing DLCs, in-game transactions, but it took a long time. And so I think Web3 needs to adopt the same mentality, go after the bigger casual audiences. And then later on, you'll figure out the Ubisofts and the EAs will figure out, oh, I definitely need an NFT strategy.
Yeah, and I find it fascinating talking about the free-to-play model and how important it has been, and how it almost rationalizes in people's minds the ability to spend money on microtransactions to a level far greater than actually just buying, an $80 AAA game title, right? You look at games like Fortnite, you look at games like Rocket League and Clash of Clans, all of them free to play. But because people haven't spent any money on it, they've become very accustomed and able and willing to be like, yeah, okay, well, I'll just spend $10 opening these chests. So like, oh, that skin's really cool. I would love to have that. Like $15 here or there. And then if you look at it over the course of their entire playing career, I would, on average, these players are probably spending greater than the price of a game just to buy up front and play. How is InfiniGods kind of tackling that idea of having digital ownership and digital assets in this while creating something that's free to play? Like, what kind of marketing are you putting out there, and like how are you speaking to those people that want to kind of just dabble their feet in it without having to create a MetaMask or have any assets on the blockchain? Is that something that's going to be possible? Is it something you're exploring, or are we targeting people within Web3 at this very moment? I'll throw that off to Owen just because that was his last thing, and then we'll go back down
Yeah.
snake style.
Yeah, it's a good question. And so what we're I think right now, because we're still pre-launch, we have beta, and that's another really important thing, understanding what works in your game, what doesn't. But I think it's primarily you're focusing on the Web3 audience. People are very comfortable using NFTs in gameplay in particular. And then your strategy is, if that starts to prove out, then you bring in regular gamers, people who are maybe not as comfortable. But we've looked at a lot of models. We've actually partnered with a company called Stardust, and essentially what we're trying to do is bring players where when they land, they can very easily, without having to connect wallets, start playing the game. And if they like it, and they want to either access certain content, or in our case, it's really like there's certain power-ups that will be NFT only, then they can actually, here's how you actually go and access those. Here's how you essentially buy them or earn them. And yes, that requires some additional steps. But what you're trying to do, and again, it's a very well proven strategy, is we actually, it's part of what we call first time user experience in gaming. It's you want to get somebody into the flow of the game. And you actually want them playing for like 10, 15 minutes on the first session, and you want them to say, I like this game. I'm happy to like spend more time, whether it's signing up or potentially paying or whatever, to play more of it. What you don't want to do is actually give a bunch of friction at the start, because a lot, and we've already seen this, people will just completely drop out. And so our strategy for all our games is to get people into that game flow first. And then if they like it, there's a number of different methods that they can either go straight to MetaMask, there's custodial wallet pieces that we can do. But that in itself is a pretty big art form of how you onboard those players. How we, maybe just to talk a bit more to it, how we see the ecosystem evolving. We do see the initial supporters, the folks who are in our Discord now, who own passes, who all want to buy our first character drop, which is the Elder Gods. We see them essentially, some of them will be game players, but we really see them as being the NFT, so it's play to earn audience. But we're going to be matching them with about 20x the number of regular gamers who just want to play merge and puzzle games. And so essentially they'll be the folks demanding the assets that the early players have. And so our strategy is, going back to where I began, it is getting those folks in at the start. We already have a lot of people playing the beta, giving us great feedback. But it's bringing in that army of regular gamers who don't really care about earning, who just care about winning tournaments, progressing through the levels with full scores. And so that's the marriage that you need to make. And I think that's actually all play to earn games or all blockchain games need to make that marriage happen.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree. I view that as like, people putting in their time. It's almost like a proof of work mechanism in a sense of contributing to an ecosystem and creating it, making it valuable too. And it can't just be built off people that are willing to constantly be feeding money into it within a small group. Panther, go ahead.
yeah, I was going to say, I think it goes back to the ethos that the technology is supposed to be a benefit for the players, not a barrier, right? And what we've seen from so many projects in the space is that it's like, unless you own an NFT, you can't even play. And we see that as just kind of reverse, right? So we want there to be an ecosystem that where people can play the games and actually, they have the ability just through playing them that they actually can actually earn and then monetize, their time, energy, and what they put into the game. Where it doesn't have to be, yeah, you put money in first, and then because you put money in, you're able to monetize. To me, that's not play to earn. That's risk to earn, or that's just investing. So that we think that's crucial element.
Yeah, you're 100% right about that just being investment too, right? Like you are putting up sometimes a really, really large chunk of Ethereum, which translates into dollars, and you're hoping that there's going to be a return on your investment. And so many times we see these games with the hype cycle starting right up at the front, is it captures all of this attention and this whirlwind of people getting in that have to spend a lot of money just to participate in the ecosystem. And then when the dust all settles, all of that money has exited the ecosystem, a lot of times on the back of just a few people, and the rest of the people are left kind of holding the bag with, and frankly, playing a game that can not always be that fun to play, right? Yeah, I love that. Mango, finish her off.
Yeah, I mean, those guys they hit the nail on the head perfectly there. Just speaking from a community standpoint, right? I'll just say, like, again, come in to our community, talk about whatever game you want, right? Whether it's a free to play, play to earn, Web 2, Web 3, really bring it home. I can't emphasize enough how, me personally, I just enjoy talking about games, and how I really want to create that is like the entire ethos of, the InfiniGods community is, hey, it's game first. Let's talk about playing some games.
Amazing. And I think that this is a good time to actually just, point the conversation more in the direction of what you guys have going on, and give you a chance to really talk about InfiniGods and what you're doing differently, why you're excited about it. I mean, you're building it, so of course you're excited about it. But if I can throw it back to Mango, what is the 30-second or minute kind of elevator pitch that you're giving to people when they say, okay, you're part of InfiniGods? Like, just tell me about it, and why I would want to play this as a gamer and not as an investor of NFTs or crypto.
Yeah, and so it all, it really ties into, we're not just coming out with, as Owen was saying, one, mega hit game, right? That's going to be years in development. We're actually going to be rolling out 3 or 4, smaller games that can even grow into their own ecosystem. So I think first, giving people the variety, right? As far as, I think that's a massive impact. And secondly, I think what we've been able to do is, even within the first 2 weeks of quote unquote launching, right, we have a playable tournament, a playable game. And so I think, as far as the quick elevator pitch is, we truly do under promise, over deliver, right? We're not coming out saying, hey, you're going to make a whole lot of money and join the ecosystem, play to earn, all this, right? It's, hey, here's a game that we're rolling out. If you enjoy it, great. If not, let's roll on to the next game that we're going to be rolling out, right? So it really comes down to whatever type of genre game you're into, it gets built into the whole entire, InfiniGods ecosystem.
Yeah, I think
Love it.
to build on that a little bit, which is a key point, is even early on, as early as preseason, for our first game, which will be in a month or two, you'll have the ability to start, one, practicing, but also two, earning some of these elements that are going to play a role and going to be interoperable throughout our entire ecosystem for years to come. And I think the thoughtfulness around the design of that, with still putting gaming at the forefront and the gamer experience, and for it to be fun first, is one of the things that sets us apart.
Oh, and you want to add anything to that?
No, that's it. I suppose it's a fun game. It's like I'd say, play InfiniMerge, play one level of arcade, and let me know what you think. It's been pretty much what people have asked me. Hey, what are you doing? And it's like just play one version of this game, and typically then they come back and they say, okay, I spent an hour on that game. So no, but that's it. It's really like it's building games, and all we're doing is changing the ownership element. There's nothing more complicated than that, and again, it goes back to building fun games that are accessible for all.
Well, and let's talk about some of the other genres that you have going on. Mango mentioned that, there's going to be a bunch of different games that fit into different genres to appeal to a wide swath of people. And of course, these assets and whatnot are going to be interoperable between them, which I think is fantastic. Beyond the merge game, what other game modes or games are you guys working on, and what genres do they fit into?
Yeah, absolutely. So the next on our slate is tower defense, and so if you're aware of games like Kingdom Rush, really popular mobile game, there's some deeper elements in there. There's also Crazy Defense Heroes, which Animoca has done actually I think a really good job of. It's a NFT, but also kind of free to play game. That's our next. That's our next game. The tower defense is incredibly popular, slightly more hardcore audience than Merge Stroke Puzzle, and again very similar. You have a base to defend. Things attack you. You need to strategically place things to actually defend, and obviously the better you defend, the better score you'll get, and of course that will help you. And so we have that as next up. Again, we have a game pass structure. We call it the community pass, and that allows you that will allow all players who hold that pass get access not only to Merge today, but when we launch towers, they get early access to that. We do have two other games after that. We've called Infinity Arena. So that again is the ability to battle other players, to use your NFT, use your god to actually battle other things. So there's like player versus player versus AI. Again, really cool way for you to use your NFT. And again, there's leaderboards, there's rankings in there as well. A lot of successful games out there in the free-to-play genre. If people are aware of Marvel Contest of Champions, that is a very good, very high monetizing game with a high audience. That's definitely something that influences us. And then we're also building up to a much bigger deliverable, and that's a game called InfiniRealms, and that is very much building out your civilization, your empire, building resources, and then the ability to either partner with other folks who have civilizations, or go to war or trade. And so that's the bigger game that we're planning later on. But each game you get access through via the pass. NFTs work across all games. That's literally one of the other huge reasons why you get into blockchain is the game asset can work across multiple games and do really cool things. And so that's what's on the that's what we're planning right now. And again, how we chose those games, obviously they need to be fun, but we do look at like the addressable audience in the Web2 audience, in the Web2 world, and how easy it would be to get them to come in and play these games. So again, want that for everybody who's listening. It's not just throwing a dart up against a board. It's really picking out what are those genres that really fit Web3, and that there's a large consumer base already there for, and how do we obviously connect the Web3 and Web2 consumer within them.
Fantastic. I'm going to throw this question to Panther to kind of just build on what you're talking about. Using the word interoperable and how focused this ecosystem is on interoperability. Do you guys a lot of your assets, all of your assets and NFTs are going to be interoperable within your own ecosystem. Do you guys have any plans on broadening that scope to other projects? Do you have any projects that you're partnering with to allow potentially some of their assets to play a game or play a role in the game? And how do you see that playing out?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes right back to what like our first little interaction on the spaces, which is what is Web3, right? And what are some of those core elements that make it special? And for us, we see that as the ecosystem being kind of one, and this being like a very large, eventually a very large community, but where there can be this interoperability, not just in the projects that you build, but with other projects that are out there. Certainly, one of the design elements for the NFTs that we're building is for other developers to be able to use that in a way that they'd want to be able to use it. We're also thinking about ways that we can incorporate other communities, not just their assets, but how can we bring them in? As far as maybe some gameplay features as well with some of the CCO art that's out there. And think about some of these communities that really are so passionate about the brands they built and have large followings and would love to see a game or potentially a level maybe built around that community. So that's very much on our radar, and we have a few tricks up our sleeves. I'll just kind of leave it at that.
Fantastic. Mango, last question before we start to wrap this up. I'm going to give you all just an opportunity to say one final thing about InfiniGods or the P2E scene. Just tell me what's going on in the community right now. You hop into the Discord. What's the vibes like? What's the atmosphere like? Why should people jump in there and go check it out? I know you mentioned talking a lot about gaming, and just enjoying and appreciating that space, but centered around InfiniGods. Like, what are you guys doing in there on a regular basis that'll make me want to hop in that Discord every single day and come say hi?
Yeah, so right now we have our beta for Infinite Merge. It's available to pass holders, and we're releasing a new level each day, and getting direct feedback from the community. And so that actually wraps up. Tomorrow will be our last beta release, and then we're going to spend the next 2 or 3 weeks really diving into tightening everything up, running a few, and I may not be able to say too much, but we're planning to run actually another tournament through Merge. And so those have been a big hit. We actually started them we called them play to list tournaments. And so instead of, the whitelist being this, grindy, spammy type of thing in Discord where, hey, if you want to be on the whitelist, send invites, retweets, all this. We actually created a tournament through our level that we specifically made for VCon. And so that own structure around the Merge tournament play has really turned into its almost its own thing in a way. And so I'm hoping in the next 2 to 3 weeks, we're actually going to be able to roll out, a free-to-play tournament where everybody can come in. And then obviously, if you're top 10 in the leaderboard, or even, top 50, right? We'll do a prize. We've been giving away merch to top 10 and all kinds of fun stuff. So yeah, if you jump in there, definitely just, take a look around, again, talk about whatever you want, and be on the lookout for our open beta as well as our next arcade tournament.
Amazing. I think that's a great rundown of the Discord too. I'm gonna have to hop in there and come check it out and see what you guys are doing in depth and playing the game, because you guys have got me excited on this. I did actually have one more thing I wanted to mention to you guys too, and I like to throw it out to all of our guests. So at the beginning of the space, I mentioned how we've always believe that P2E, of course, play to earn, is kind of due for a rebranding. Kind of got some a black eye a little bit there with how the space was and how frothy it was, and just how incredibly overhyped with not a lot of substance in there. But at its core, play to earn really implies that the whole reason that you're even doing this is to earn an income, is to make money, right? And as you guys mentioned before, putting finance first isn't really the path to success in this. One of the things that we think it should be rebranded to is play and own, right? The idea of you're playing all of this and you will own stuff at the end of it. How do you guys feel about that kind of rebranding, or how would you rebrand it yourselves? I'll start off with Owen, and also use this opportunity to say any final words about how InfiniGods fits into that.
Yeah, I think play and own makes sense, but I actually think like what you want is, so you really don't want the space like being like, hey, it's play to earn or play to own. It's like, hey, here is a really cool MMO. It just happens to have ownership elements as opposed to in-app transactions or DLCs. Or here's a merge game. It's a puzzle casual. Oh, by the way, there's like you can own some of the power ups. You can actually own and trade, and others you can buy off the developer or you can buy from other players. So I think that's like the rebrand needs to come very much be game first. I do think you're right, though, taking the earn element, taking that earn language out really helps. And I think ownership, you're right, is absolutely it is Web3. I mean, it is about property rights on the internet. And gaming has a lot of property, and players now own it, not developers. And so I think that's the general theme to go for. And I think just like quick parting words. I think it's I think this is an amazing time to build. I think we're going through this great reset. I think everybody's now getting like, hey, play to earn in its own cannot survive. It's not economically viable, but there are people who want to do it. But and so you should meet that motivation in your games. It's now possible to do that, but you need to be very wary of the other motivations, which is fun or social or competitive, mastery, etc., etc. And so I think we're on a good path. And as long as more and more developers like ourselves focus on that, then we won't need to worry about play to earn, or we won't need to worry about traditional gamers being super pissed at the concept. It'll start to prove itself out to be really positive.
Yeah, and I actually really liked what you said about almost needing an unbranding of it rather than rebranding, right? The internet really took hold of people's lives once people kind of stopped just using the term internet all of the time. There was a point in time where you had to log into the internet or go on the internet and check it out. And now it's such a standard part of our lives, especially with it being on our phones, that you just use it. And I do think that NFTs are going to reach that point, and that's when they will be truly mainstream, is that when digital ownership is actually just assumed and that non-fungible tokens are the underpinning technology of it. And once we stop saying NFTs, once we stop saying play to earn or play and own or any of that, and it just becomes so ingrained in society and culture, that's when that paradigm will really shift. So I love that answer. Panther, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, it makes me think of kind of like smartphones, right? Like, do we really sit around and say like, hey, where's your smartphone? Not really anymore. It's just, hey, where's your phone? And I think it's just this transition, and it's obviously new, and so people want to put a title on it, so this way they can identify it or speak to it. But I think as this transition goes and more people start building and educating themselves around the ecosystem, it's just going to be Web3 gaming, or even just gaming, right? Because again, it's not about this idea of like putting up a sum of money, or even first incentive being, hey, what can I make off this? If that's what you're thinking about, that's a job. So there's a lot of things you can do for jobs. There's actually ways you can be professional gamers or work with game dev teams. But this is like redefining, the experience you have with a product or with a team. And people have been collecting or pay for entertainment or fun, in a lot of different walks of life for a long time. And I think that's a major element to this, is like, it's okay to, partake in something that you enjoy. And by the way, there's this great new technology that actually allows you to have the benefit of ownership. And that's really what NFTs are at the end of the day, are defining property rights on the internet, like O said. And so we think they're an important element, but there never should also be, I think, at this stage in the market, an overweight towards, do you need to have a fungible token? Do you need to have NFTs? You should be building something that's right for your ecosystem and your community, and for the vision that you have for your project.
I love that. We're just rebranding it to gaming. I mean, that is the point, right? Eventually, that this will be so commonplace that it will just be a part of gaming. Mango, I'm going to give you the final thoughts on this as well. I'm going to ask you one final question. Which Halo will be the first one to integrate some kind of crypto or NFTs? We'll be like what, Halo 8, Halo 9?
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I would love to have a Master Chief or Cortana puzzle piece in the merge game. So yeah, I've actually been playing Halo Infinite a fair amount, and so yeah, I guess we'll see. Maybe I'll see who's head of Web3 over at Halo at 343 or whoever it is that runs the studio now, and see what we can do about getting that done.
Oh, I'm sure they have one. Any other thoughts on just that kind of the rebrand of the P2E name or anything like that?
No, that summed it all up, and I really appreciate you guys and you personally for having us on and asking these questions and structuring it, in a really phenomenal way that's around games and around having fun. So yeah, just want to thank you for having us on, and yeah, looking forward to jumping in the StarWolvez ecosystem myself, and yeah, seeing where the Infinite Gods and the Wolf see where we can align on everything, and yeah, rock and roll from there.
Amazing. And yeah, like I said at the beginning of the space, this is what it's all about, right? It's about furthering the discussion, really talking about it. And hopefully, you end up having people listening to this that kind of have a aha moment. And I think it's so important for teams to really go out there and flex their kind of their brain muscle in a bigger way than just their project. Everybody knows that everything about your project and that you're excited about it, but why should we trust you guys in terms of gaming experts, Web3 experts, and all of that stuff? And I think it's just a great conversation to have. It's a lot more organic, and it's been really enjoyable. I really appreciate all three of yours time, as well as everybody else in the audience. I'm just going to remind everybody that this Spaces is recorded, so if you tuned in late, you are going to be able to listen back and catch up on the whole discussion as well. We will give it a little bit of a visual treatment and throw it up on our YouTube. So once that's up there, I'm going to give it to you guys, and you're more than welcome to, of course, share it with your community too, and hopefully they can listen in on the discussion as well if they weren't able to tune in. But this was a fantastic talk. I really, really appreciate your time. I'm really excited to check out and follow along with InfiniGods. Of course, we have the group DM open there. So if you guys need anything else from me, or you ever want to talk more about P2E, if you have something that you want to share, or you want to thoughts you want to get out, we